Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Amy's Rebellion by Julia Goldhirsh. And this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Prologue, Amy's Diary. I was 12 years old the first time I killed a man. They called me the Amethyst Killer, but the Magic Council's leader, Opal, is the real murderer. After the War of the Twin Swords, she tried to put me to death for killing a man during peace negotiations, even though he attacked first. The only choice left for me was to run to the human world, but she followed me and took my friend Knight. But that wasn't enough for her. Opal destroyed our entire clan, and she won't stop until she gets what she wants. My death. Chapter 1. Amy stared up at the shining violet letters that read, "The Gem of the Forest," above her shop. She sighed and stepped through the amethyst geode that doubled as the front door. The magic barrier that protected the place from malicious magic shimmered and parted to let her through. She slipped the sign hanging in the front window from open to closed. Hopefully no one tries to come in on my half day again. We close early. It's not a hard concept to grasp. The shelves near the glass display cases were strewn with a plethora of essential oils. As she skimmed the necklaces in the front window, someone whistled to get her attention, and she lifted her head as Asher mouthed a "thank you" while holding up the hand of their girlfriend. A rose quartz choker clung to the girlfriend's neck, and Amy mouthed, "You're welcome," before slinking into her workshop, away from the gaze of snooping, magicless humans. She tucked her hair into a ponytail and was soldering some silver around one of her favorite gemstones, a black cat's eye, when the door chimed. Was the closed sign not enough of a hint? Maybe you need to ward this place against humans as well, she muttered. Amy looked at her enchanted jasper and saw a pale, hunched-over man with oily brown bangs covering his eyes. Earl's wife must be at it again. Will he ever learn? She shook her head and plastered on a smile before peeking out of her workshop. "Hey, Earl, is everything okay? I'm supposed to be closed at this hour." Earl sniffled and wiped away tears. "I think she might be cheating on me. Again." Amy pressed her lips together. "All right, I'll take this one order just for you, but don't go telling anyone else about it. If the sapphire didn't work, you'll want a black cat's eye pendant this time. Just trust me on this." His lower lip quivered. "Thank you. I'll do it. How much is it, and how soon can you get it to me?" He held out a few 20s. She accepted his offer with a smile. "What you have there will cover it. I'll have it ready for you in a few days." "Thank you." He shook her hand with sweaty palms and plopped the money onto the table before leaving through the front door. Amy wiped sweat off on her black slacks. He'll never learn, will he? Once he'd left, she locked the door behind him and went back to her workshop. She held her hand steady as she fused the last bit of silver to a black cat's eye gem. It reminded her so much of Night. Amy licked her parched lips. "Should have been me that Opal killed that day, not you. Opal wanted to kill me because I made the peace negotiations fail during the War of the Twin Swords. I'm the reason she burned our old clan to the ground." The dark gem warmed Amy's hand. Purple magic swirled around its surface as she recited the enchantment for wisdom. It wouldn't save his marriage, but it might give his wife some kindness and give him some desperately needed happiness, and the willpower to move on from her. If only moving on from losing her friend Knight and her sister Chow were that simple. Amy gave a wan smile as she looped a silver chain around the finished pendant and crimped both ends before adding a clasp. When she held the necklace up to the light, a thin slit of white went down the center, resembling the slit pupils of a cat. "Take good care of him, Knight," she whispered, before putting the necklace in a black velvet box and closing it. She packaged the extra watch in a matching box for him as a gift. Amy pursed her lips as she put the jewelry in the glass case. "I miss you more with each passing day, Knight." The whistled coo of the cuckoo clock made Amy jump. She turned to the light lavender walls. "It's 5 p.m. already? Maybe if I hurry, I can catch the tail end of the craft market." Amy shoved the finished jewelry into the safe deposit box, along with a wad of hundreds from the register, before setting the alarm and walking to her car. Once Amy had parked, she slammed her door shut, paid for parking, and walked past the Magic Cookie on Atlantic Avenue. She passed by an art gallery with a plethora of colorful corgi sculptures and followed the crowd of people walking towards the trail of white tents. Amy turned down the next road into an alley brimming with huge lines of art booths. The festival was brimming with people. It almost made her feel like she was back in the magic world. Almost. artists creating cartoon portraits of passersby lined either side of the closed street, and one woman bent over a stack of tarot cards. A massive crystal quartz sphere decorated the center of her table. A booth with vanilla bath bombs and lavender bath salts caught her eye, reminding her of the plant mages that lived east of the remains of the Enchantress clan. As she approached the stall and inhaled the heady aromas of vanilla and lavender with a hint of lemon, she longed for her lavender pillow, the one enchanted to cure her insomnia. She'd been forced to leave it behind when she'd fled Opal's wrath. Amy held out a 20. I'll take the lemongrass and verbena bath bomb, please. The woman smiled and leaned into Amy's ear. Your bracelet really worked. My crush finally asked me on a date. She held out her silver rose quartz bracelet and let out an ear-piercing squeal. Amy rubbed at her wrists and ground her teeth together so she wouldn't slap her hand over her ears. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you again for the bath bombs, Claire. She waved. No problem. Good to see you again, Amy. As Amy walked to the next booth, she caught sight of golden eyes, dark hair, and warm beige skin in her peripheral vision. Night? And when she turned back to look at the figure, they were gone. Am I seeing ghosts of night now? Amy shook off the thought. Or maybe it was just another enchantment mage in hiding. Amy continued down the street of booths until a tent gleaming with sterling silver dragons caught her eye. She darted to the shop teeming with gemstones nesting in the cloths of sterling silver dragons. Of course, it was Alex's booth. They always had the best craftsmanship she'd ever seen. Amy ran her fingers along a rough labradorite encased in a silver wire cage that resembled a flame. The cage hung from the claws of a pewter dragon. She sucked in a breath as she picked up the necklace and nearly choked on the oppressively humid air. It made her long for the chill of Gemstone Forest and the crisp air of the cliffs in the magic realm, but her home was only a smoldering pile of ash because of Opal. This one is beautiful, Alex. You've really outdone yourself this week. Alex smiled and leaned against the table. Thanks. They are rather enchanting, he said with a wink. Amy wrinkled her nose and nudged their shoulder. Be careful saying things like that in the open, joke or not. If Opal overhears jokes like that, she'll find me again, but I'm not moving. One of us will be dead, and it won't be me. She has ruined enough of my life. Alex held up their hands. Sorry, it was in poor taste, but if you're looking for some more jewelry, check out the new booth over there. Amy followed where they pointed. Past the rows of dragon-themed necklaces and cheap glass masquerading as gems was a booth with pewter and sterling necklaces. A yellow, orange, amber glittered in the sunlight, radiating ice blue magic. Thanks, I'll check it out. Amy shuffled over to the booth and picked up the pendant to check the tag, but there was no price listed. The chips and scratches on the surface, along with the discoloration, reminded her of something ancient. Excuse me, how much is this? Amy held up the pendant. The old man's golden brown, weather-beaten face broke into a smile. That pendant is special. You have good taste, dear. People here are only interested in flashy things, but this one has an inner beauty to it. Handle it with care. It has a bit of a temper. She cocked her head to one side and said, just low enough for him to hear, ¿De dónde eres enchantario? But he just gave her a blank look. Her face fell into a frown. I guess my gut instinct was wrong. After a long pause, he whispered, Soy de Evia. Interesting, he's from Evia. That means he was a weather mage. Amy squinted at the pendant. Then what is he doing with what looks like an ancient enchantress weapon? Amy cocked her head to one side. If you don't mind me asking, what's your name? He smiled. I have many names, but let's just say that I'm a distant relative of yours and leave it at that. Amy held the necklace up to the sunlight and it shimmered like gold. Was this one of Merlin's necklaces? He gripped his stomach and chuckled. Don't let Freya hear you say that. Can you not tell it's hers by how the amber glitters? Amy shook her head. We never learned about her in school. Is she a famous enchantress? The man snickered. Not quite. Take care of the necklace. And what about a painting for it? The man pressed his lips together and the wrinkles on his forehead smoothed, making him look much younger. Consider it a gift from a generous family member. Okay, well, thank you. She clutched the pendant to her chest as she walked away. When she looked back to wave goodbye, he was gone and the booth had vanished. Maybe he controlled mist magic? Also, how am I related to a weather mage? He mentioned Freya, too. How are we related? Amy's back straightened as a flash of yellow gold passed through her peripheral vision again. I wasn't imagining it. Someone is following me. Amy picked up her pace and put her hand to the selenite around her neck to activate its cloaking magic. She slid through black back alleys and hid behind corners. Her home was near the plaza, but she took a roundabout way of getting to her front door. When she thought she'd lost the person following her, she slowed her pace but kept the cloaking magic up. She couldn't see the flash of gold and black in her vision anymore. Either she'd lost them or they were excellent at being undetected. She kept the main barriers up as she turned the key in the lock, only letting down the wards long enough to slip inside. She heaved a sigh of relief when she slammed the front door shut behind her, but that sigh turned into a squeak when a voice said, "You didn't really think a barrier like that would keep me out, did you?" She whirled around to see a figure. Sandy brown hair fell over eyes that were more hazel than yellow or gold. Her grip on her gem pouch tightened. "Are you here to kill me? If you are, then you'll have to fight me until my dying breath. I won't go to Opal willingly." His lips turned up into a smile. "Who said I was working for Opal or that I wanted to kill you? Perhaps I'm just here to have a chat with an old friend." Amy crossed her arms over her chest. "I've never met you before in my life." He put his hands in his pockets. "You have, but I looked different back then." Amy scanned over him, trying to figure out where she knew him from. Her eye caught on a silvery glint in his right hand. She reached for a gemstone, but was too slow. He threw the dart at her face. Shit. Amy's limbs felt too heavy and slow. One hand reached for a gem, and she raised the other, bracing for the dart. Why did this have to be a physical fight? I could have handled a magical assault. But instead of feeling the prick of a dart, a bright light flashed behind her closed lids. Something clattered to the floor at her feet. Amy removed her hands from her face. On the floor, the dart glittered gold. The necklace glowed blue in her hand. The intruder's lips curled back in a snarl. Damn, I was too late. He moved with the lithe grace of a cat and approached her, getting close enough for her to smell the scent of cinnamon wafting from him. He reminded her of someone, but she couldn't place the memory, and judging how the person following her had altered his appearance from when she caught him following her at the market, he had to be a shifter. He acts so familiar with me, but I didn't know any shapeshifters unless... It couldn't be him, could it? I need to ask Garnet later, if I make it out of this. The necklace crackled at his proximity, light spilling out from the amber at its center. He leaped back, flinching away from the light magic like a cat avoiding water. "I'll be back for you. Don't worry." He tossed a black gem at the floor at her feet. "Perhaps this will jog your memory. The name's Dusk. It was good seeing you again, Amy." Her name sounded clunky on his tongue. His words lacked cadence in a way that felt familiar. "How do I know you?" "We fought together in the War of the Twin Swords, but I am not the same person I was." Before she could ask what he meant by that, his figure disappeared before her eyes. If he's a shifter, how did he do that? Weird. Amy grabbed the stone he'd left from the floor and turned it over in her palm. A streak of light went through its middle, a black cat's eye gem. The stone didn't glow with magic, so maybe he had them for show. She grabbed the stone and placed it next to her crystal quartz to pull any impurities from it. It's just like Knight's gem, and their names sound similar, but Opal killed Knight. And he mentioned betrayal. What did he mean by that? Maybe he just mistook me for someone else. She glanced down at the amethyst bracelet housing her familiar. No, it can't be him. Naru said she was too late to save Knight, and I doubt Opal would have kept him all this time. She's never been the merciful type. Amy raked a hand through her hair. He's dead, remember? Dead. You searched for him for years, and every trail came back cold. Why don't you make yourself useful and look up why that necklace scared the assassin off so easily? Amy clicked her computer's monitor on and pulled up an internet tab. Maybe the humans have some information about Freya. She clicked on the first tab and skimmed the article. She was vengeful and had a carriage pulled by cats. She sounds like my kind of woman. The amethyst bracelet on her arm glowed, and her familiar Violet must have heard her thoughts because she turned into her lynx form and curled up on the floor by Amy's desk. Violet purred contentedly as she stroked her coarse, spiky purple fur. "I heard you mention cats, and I wanted to come out to say hi, but there's no other cat here." Her silky voice curled around Amy's mind. Amy continued searching through several more web pages and found a story about Brisingamen, Freya's necklace. It said that Freya was the goddess of sorcery, sex, lust, beauty, fertility, and death. Wow, talk about multitasking. Wait, does that mean this was a sorceress's necklace? She'd only ever heard of an enchantress. She only ever heard of enchantresses using gemstones for their weapons. Well, aside from the few crossover gems glass magicians used. Amy gulped as she skimmed through a story about how Freya had lusted after the necklace so much that she'd given up her honor for it. I'm glad I didn't have to pay such a hefty price. Amy yawned and looked down at the clock to see that it was almost 11 p.m. She yawned and closed the laptop. She bit her lip. I should call Garnet for help, but if Opal knows where I am, I could put her in danger. Maybe if I do some jewelry making, I'll be calm enough to figure out some other way to fix this myself. She pulled out some tumbled labradorite, some braided silver, crimped beads, and a clasp. Amy tried to steady her shaking hands by wire wrapping a labradorite pendant for the storefront, but she jumped at each thump of branches against the window and the loud bang and hum of the air conditioner as it kicked on. Amy took a deep breath. Just focus on your work. She held a bead up to her work lamp. The rough gemstone shone turquoise and green with streaks of gold. Beautiful. She drilled a hole through it so she wouldn't have to destroy the way the unpolished gem held the light. Amy beaded a thin wire with tiger's eye and obsidian for the labradorite necklace and put on a bevel and clasp. Perfect. Her hands had stopped shaking and her breath had evened out by the time she slid the labradorite pendant onto the silver wire. Amy's eyes felt like lead, but her heart raced in her chest. She glanced at her cell phone clock, and it was only midnight. Maybe it's time to call Garnet. Hopefully she's still awake. She grabbed her cell phone and punched in her sister's number. After several rings, Garnet picked up. Her voice came in huffs. You never call at this hour. Are you okay? Either you were running a marathon or I just interrupted something. The thought made Amy's face flush, and she cleared her throat. About that, one of Opal's goons tried to attack me. The phone's connection crackled, and Garnet shouted, You're lucky I'm working close by this month. See, I told you settling down was a bad idea. I'll be right there. We'll get you moved out tonight. But I don't want to. Click. Amy sighed. Well, at least she's on her way, but she won't be happy when I tell her I still don't want to move. If she's just visiting to help with the barrier, hopefully she'll be fine. She just can't stay, or else. Amy glanced back to the golden dart. If it hadn't been for Freya's necklace, he would have captured or killed her. Amy reached a hand to the pendant, and it glowed as if acknowledging her thoughts. Violet grumbled when Amy stopped petting her and got up from her chair. Let's go set up shop for tomorrow. The lynx's ear twitched. You nearly died, and your response is to go throw yourself into your work? How did I get stuck with such a workaholic? Amy's shoulders tensed. I know you're joking, but it still stings. Violet loped over to Amy and nuzzled her arm. It's how you avoid your feelings. I much prefer scratching and biting the things that hurt me. We could scratch Opal's face. Amy gave a slight smile. We will soon enough, but we need more time and power if we want to survive the encounter. Violet hung her head. I've waited for 7 years. I'm growing impatient. Amy reached down to scratch behind her ears. As am I, but we need strength in numbers. Amy pursed her lips. And if we're going to the store, you'll need to change back. Can't risk any humans seeing you. Violet bristled at the request, but she reformed herself into a bracelet in a swirl of purple energy. I missed the open plains of the magic world. Amy shoved her hands in her sweatpants pockets. I do too, but the Battle of Opal's Fall took that away from us. No one can go back to that wasteland. Violet gave a low growl. She deserves death. The forest is gone. The others are gone because of her. Amy wiped at tears forming in her eyes. I know, and I miss my sister Selenite, but if we try to face Opal now, we'll die too. Violet's sullen tone echoed through their connection. You promised you'd help me fight her. Amy replied, and I will. This amulet might be exactly what we need to turn the tables if we can transform darts into gold. Violet trilled. You make an excellent point, but how did he get through the barrier in the first place? I didn't sense him hitting the spell. Amy gulped. Not sure. He was fast. Maybe he slipped through behind me. Or he really is night, a voice in her head added, but she shoved it down. He wouldn't have taken Opal's side over mine. Amy scooped her gems in her hand and reinforced the protection magic at the front door before leaving the house. Hopefully one of Garnet's homebrewed spells will be strong enough to keep him out next time. The evening had turned the air from scorching to tolerable. The amethyst geode entrance beckoned her, and she walked through the protective barrier. The human alarm system chirped, and she punched her code into the keypad to silence it. Amy grabbed one of the mannequin heads in the shop window and draped the labradorite necklace around its neck, admiring how it added a splash of color to the display. The gem had a certain wild nature to it. If you polished labradorites, they lost their beauty, and it was like trying to tame a stallion when you wanted to use their magic. It would be even more gorgeous when the sunlight hit the glass case in the morning. After surveying the store one more time, she reset the alarm and left. Waiting at the entrance to her apartment was Garnet, dressed in black yoga pants and a loose t-shirt with no bra. Her normally smooth black hair was frizzy and tangled, sticking up at all ends. Sweat dripped down her dark beige skin. Her amethyst eyes were feverish. At times like this, Amy glanced at her own iolite purple hair and amber eyes and wondered if they were really sisters. Garnet paced back and forth, and Amy saw the small bite marks visible on her neck. "Playing with your vamp of the week again?" she asked. Garnet covered the mark with her hand. "Don't call him that. I've been seeing him for months, and blood mages aren't vampires. They're Etzli. Got it? Easily. He doesn't need my blood, and I don't need to be fed on." Amy waved away her protests and let her sister in. "Sure, that's what all the addicts say." Garnet shoved Amy's arm. "Pretty rude considering you're the one who called me frantically at midnight asking for my help." Amy shrugged. "You make a fair point, but that's also why you love me." She laughed. "Do I, though?" Amy gave her puppy dog eyes, and Garnet smiled. "All right, I guess I love you, but Cal Condoni is still my favorite." Amy muttered. Obviously, she's not, because I know for a fact she prefers to go by Cal, just like I prefer being called Amy instead of Amethyst. Garnet shrugged. "Whatever. Now, do you want help with that barrier or not?" Amy ran a hand along her face. "Yes, I want your help." "Good." Garnet flung the door open, and Amy hastily disarmed the amethyst near the entrance so she wouldn't start stumbling around in a drunken haze. Honestly, who waltzes into someone's house when they know it's warded? She's lucky my affinity isn't malachite. Amy shuddered. The marbled green malachite embedded in Excalibur's sheath had a ward that could fragment your sanity or curse you with worse luck than someone living through the Black Plague. She shook off the thought and lowered a glare at Garnet. "You're lucky I don't have a more deadly gem at my doorstep." Amy slammed the door shut so hard behind Garnet that it shook on its hinges. Garnet shrugged. "If you had better protection spells, then I wouldn't have to come out here. Aren't you some kind of enchantress prodigy? Why didn't you just kill him while you had the chance?" Amy pursed her lips. "You know exactly why." Garnet waved her off. Yeah. You lost control of your powers. You killed someone in the middle of a war, so now you hate fighting. So what? Executed a few dozen soldiers in the same war, and you don't see me whining about it." Amy balled her fist at her side. "Well, I guess I'm not like you, Garnet. Plus, it wasn't just one person. My actions resulted in the deaths of many. If I'd had better control over my powers, then the Battle of Opal's Fall wouldn't have happened." Amy shivered despite the warm, humid air in her entryway. Garnet stumbled over the purple rug in the living room, and Amy clicked her tongue. "Are you blood drunk right now?" Garnet's words slurred slightly. "No, I only let him have a little." Amy groaned. "Let's just get this over with. Hopefully you aren't so tipsy that you forgot the barrier spell."